Do you need encouragement to turn tragedies into your own triumphant life story? If so, this podcast is for you. Listen to powerful guests who have persevered through challenges so you can gain strength to build your championship life. The host of Professor of Perseverance podcast, Dr. James Perdue.
Hey, come on in. It's time for us to get started. Trying to get fired up, try to get some inspiration, motivation. You know, something when we're going through our next trials and tribulation, we can use something out of this podcast. It's going to, grab a gold nugget. Grab 3 of them while you're at it. And it helps you get through your next trials, tribulation, hardship, challenge. And as I always say, don't take it to the grave with you. It's not going to help you then. But give it away to someone else and help them pay it forward. All right, today on the show, we got a guy that's coming in, and he used to bicycling, and he was in a venture where he was a grueling athlete, was in a challenge, and already did over 140.6 miles, Ironman in Florida. He was feeling invincible. Shoot, I would after doing all that. He said about 6 months later, he got a diagnosis of cancer. Then after beating that, he was second to cancer. Man, so he's going to go in and tell us how he was able to use the training to gear up and prepare for his biking, 140 plus miles, and use that to help him with this diagnosis of cancer. Welcome to the show, Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's a real pleasure, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to chat with you and your audience today.
That's why we're glad you're here too. So definitely, they say that this cancer, I guess, is in all of us and our DNA somewhere. And for some whatever reason, some people get it and other people don't get it.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And so, but to here get a double dose of it, that's a whammy in itself. So, especially, being this big, like I said, Ironman Ironman athlete, biking 140 plus miles, and be that healthy. And then this get kicked in the teeth.
That's pretty much what it is. So I'll tell you the way this all came to be. So it was April 1st of 2022. I am heading down the highway to a dental appointment, and a notification pops up on my phone, and I get to a red light because I try not to text while I'm driving. And so I get to a red light and I log into my healthcare portal and I scroll through pages of medical jargon that I really don't understand. And then I get to the punchline, and the punchline says clinically significant prostate cancer likely. I sit there for a second. I'm at the light. The cars are beeping, and I'm like, how could they wait? Maybe they mixed up my results. Like it's April 1st. Is this a bad?
I was going to say, yeah.
Right. This can't be the case. And so, to be fair, my cancer journey didn't start that day. It started with a routine physical. I had no symptoms whatsoever. I try to take care of myself the best I can. Went in for a routine physical. They found some test results that were out of whack. And then I went in for some confirmatory testing. And this was the confirmatory testing. And, I'm fairly young. And so I'm like, how could I have cancer? Are you kidding me? I'm in good shape. I take care of myself. And as I started to go through the process, and I'll tell you, 2 million Americans this year will hear those words, you have cancer. And life is never the same after you hear it. And so, as I went through that and processed all that and probably went through all the stages of grief we hear about, 10 times in an hour, I thought about it and said, well, wait a minute. I just did Ironman Florida 5 months ago, right? And so I swam in the open water for 2.4 miles, did 112 miles on the bike, and then ran a full marathon, all in less than 17 hours. In fact, less than 16 hours I did it. And it was, as I grappled with the diagnosis, I thought to myself, look, I do hard things. That's what I do. One of the reasons I do triathlon is because it teaches you to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. right? And so in those moments on the bike, when it feels like it's never going to end and your legs hurt, mile 18, mile 20 of a marathon, when your brain is telling you, you don't need to do this, your legs are begging you to stop, you just kind of sit in it and you just keep going, one foot in front of the other. And before you know it, you're at the finish line and people are cheering and your arms are raised and you did it. So as I dealt with the diagnosis, I'm like, no, I do hard things. I could do this. And in fact, cancer doesn't develop over 5 or 6 months. And so when I thought about it, I'm like, well, I did Ironman Florida with cancer. And so I can do just cancer. And so I went through treatment. I got surgery in July of that year. Really, it was like July 1st, almost July 4th weekend. And I called it Independence Day because I got rid of the cancer. Went on to recover, actually walked more than 140 miles in the month after my surgery because I wasn't allowed to run. And so I went out and walked and then did the New York City Marathon that November. And I was back.
Wow.
I'm like, I beat this thing. I'm back to doing endurance sports. I'm in good shape. And I did the marathon, raced a little bit that spring. And by then I had become really an evangelist for routine screening. I actually did a public service announcement for the Prostate Cancer Foundation of America because I'm young, healthy. I, by all rights, shouldn't have had prostate cancer. I had no symptoms. I wasn't sick. Routine testing really saved my life, right? And so, I wanted to tell anyone who is everyone about the power of routine testing. And so taking some of my own advice, I went in for a routine colonoscopy. Again, part of it physical. I'm like, I'm reasonably healthy. I race. I'm good. Went in for this colonoscopy. I awake in the recovery room after the procedure, and the nurse says, the doctor's going to be right in. He comes in, puts his hands like this and says, look, I found, a couple polyps. I don't think they're anything. I sent them off for biopsy. He said, and he hesitated, and he said, but I also found a significant mass. And I said, well, like how significant? Because I'm groggy. You don't really know what else to ask. And he's like, it's very significant. You need to get a referral to a surgeon on the way out the door. And so, I, stumble out into the waiting room. My wife is waiting for me. I look at her and I'm like, it's not good. And then, then I'm thrown into this world and I go through, a whole series of tests and find out I have stage 3B colorectal cancer.
Wow.
And so 2 cancers, 2 years, this one more serious than the first. Again, though, the tests became the testament. So the first time the test was Ironman. Could I do it? Could I finish it? All right. I do hard things. I could do this. This time I'm like, all right, so I made it through one cancer. This one is more serious. It's a whole different ball game, but I made it through before, and I think I can beat this. So, I immediately got engaged in care here in New York. We're privileged to have lots of good medical centers around. I got into care actually on part of a clinical trial, and so I went through 27 rounds of radiation, 27 rounds of chemo. Okay. Took a short break, and then had 6 months worth of chemo infusions in which I got 3 chemo drugs rather than the standard 2 drugs that they give most folks. I was able to do that in part because A, I had the right mindset, but B, because I was in pretty good shape. My doctor said,
exactly.
I'm basically going to give you as much chemo as a human being can stand in hopes that it provides for you a longer lasting result. At the end of that, I won't keep everybody in suspense. My tumor is now gone. It remains gone. It's been gone for about 19 months now.
All right.
So, by no means am I out of that danger zone, but it looks like the treatment was successful. And I will tell you that in the past few weeks, I'm back to racing again. I raced a half iron about 2 weeks ago when we're recording this. And so I did a 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike ride, and a half marathon, and was not my fastest time, but I'm back out there and back doing it. I think with
that may be your best time with being a double cancer survivor.
Yeah, I would take it. And honestly, it was just,
Yeah.
it was crossing the finish line, right? It
Yeah.
was, you know, I
Yeah.
did this, I'm back, I battled back. You know, it's amazing. You know, it takes a long time to build up your fitness, but not very long to lose it. And so
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
exactly a fair kind of thing. And so it's taken me some time to build up again. In a couple of weeks, I'm actually running up the steps of the Empire State Building, all
Okay.
86 flights, to benefit our local medical system. That was helpful to me. But, you know, I will say, and I'll take a breath in a second, you know, one of the things that you learn by surviving cancer really is you learn the essence of gratitude. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I spent a lot of time talking to my doctor about, you know, how in God's name could I have gotten 2 cancers in 2 years? You know, they did some DNA testing because I wanted to know if there was something that I needed to chat with my kids about, if their risk was higher. And there was nothing there. And I said to my doctor, you know, so like, what's the deal? And he said, all right, so look, here's an important distinction. Health is not fitness. They're two different things. You could be fit as anyone else and still get a serious disease, which you did. And he said, the second thing is some of this is just bad luck. And I don't know if that was more satisfying to me or less satisfying, but it was what it was. And so when I had a good treatment outcome, I looked at it much in the same way. I didn't necessarily do anything to give myself a better treatment outcome. The chemo did all the work. And so if it was a little bad luck that I got cancer, it was at least partly good luck that I'm in remission. And with that just comes an incredible amount of gratitude, right? A thankfulness for something that you didn't necessarily earn.
Oh, exactly. And so, but isn't it amazing how the body is? I'm all about getting early checkups just to try to beat everything off. Okay. Doesn't mean you're perfect about it, but you do your
Right.
best to get looked at. Not sad, but well, we're going to say it. My mom was stupid at one point. She hadn't seen a doctor in a couple of years. She's like 65, 66 years old. And he sent a letter to her. Hey, you hadn't had your physical in a while. You need to come on in, set up an appointment. She throws a letter in the trash can. About 6 weeks later, gets second notice. You need to come in. She throws a letter in the trash can. Third notice, she says, you know, well, if you're not going to listen to your doctor, I can't have you here as a patient. If you know, I can't be responsible for you.
Right.
So I'll have to discharge you just, you know, from being a patient. So she sets up the appointment, cussing, mad. I'm healthy. Nothing's wrong with me. It's going to be a waste of money. They go in and find lung cancer on her. Here she is alive 20 years later because her doctor was persistent to get her there. Okay. Not that he had a hunch or anything, but for the early detection. Let's look just in case. And 20 years later, she's 85 years old, and physically for 85, she's doing all right. So, yeah, I'm all about go get checked out and before any symptoms happen and try to cut things off at the path.
Yeah, I mean, look, I had, you know, with the prostate cancer, because I had wanted to run the marathon. And so I said to my doctor, I'm like, suppose we push the treatment off and I do the marathon and we do the treatment right after the marathon. And he's like, absolutely not. He's like, no, it will spread if we don't treat it over the course of 4 or 5 months. And you need to do this. And with, you know, the colorectal cancer, I had no symptoms whatsoever. I was fine. And, you know, stage 3B is precariously close to 4, right? You're one step away.
Yeah.
And so the time makes a difference. And one of the things about colonoscopies is that by removing those polyps that can become cancerous. So it's not only detection, it's prevention. If you leave those polyps there, there's a greater likelihood they're going to turn into cancer. If you take them out, you eliminate that risk. And so it's not only detection, it's also prevention. And, you know, my doctors were really clear that if it hadn't been picked up when it was, it could have been a very different outcome.
Oh, yeah.
Friends who are over the age of 50 who say to me, well, it's so inconvenient and the prep is yucky and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you want to see inconvenient and yucky? Wind up with cancer and have to go. I went to 88 doctor's appointments in 6 months. You want to see inconvenient and yucky? I'll show you inconvenient and yucky.
That's right.
You know, and
isn't it a shame that we got to slap them with the truth enough, like a ton of bricks sometimes, to get people. I understand. I did a colonoscopy, my first one years ago. They found one polyp, nothing else. Um, but yeah, you got to slap some people like
Yeah.
a ton of bricks to make them understand.
Yep.
You give them the reality. Hey, you think that sucked? How about doing this then?
Yep.
So
So the book I wrote is called Every Mile Matters. Was really about how my triathlon training helped me navigate the cancer landscape. And, there are some real specific examples. So when you're training for an Ironman and pretty much any distance triathlon, you're doing at least 2 sports a day. This is the off season now. I finished my last big race for the year. So today I did only 1 sport. Today I cycled. But generally, you're doing 2 sports a day. In my case, I've got a pretty busy life. So generally, I'm out by 5. And I either work out in the morning or in the evening, and sometimes in both. And I always felt like that alone time where the bright lights aren't on you, that's where you kind of grind it out. And that's where it can be a lot tougher. And so, you're out running and you're like, in the Northeast, it's cold in the winter, and I run year round. And so, it's January and you're training and you're going out for a 5-mile run while the rest of your family is sipping hot chocolate by the fire.
that's right.
Not always the funnest thing in the world to do, but that determination, that perseverance, the grit you develop, the tolerance you develop for uncomfortable things. If you're doing a 20-mile run, it's going to take you 4 hours. And I try to run without music just so I can be with myself and that kind of thing.
Ooh, okay.
And I'll tell you, it being able to persevere in the midst of the monotony, the boredom, the voice telling you, just go home, you're done for the day, you'll get out there again tomorrow. All of that really geared me up for cancer treatment. And one of the greatest parallels was, I was, 6 treatments into this 8 infusion course. And, at the outset, I was in the infusion room. I'm eating pizza during the infusion, everything else. By the end, you're not, because there's a cumulative effect to all of this. And, my doctor said, look, we're going to keep an eye on your blood work. We're going to keep an eye on what's going on, the side effects. When we got to 6, he's like, all right, so your blood work is tanked out. Like, I might need to put you in the hospital. And I said, well, and the side effects are getting pretty significant too.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, look, we might need to pull the plug on this. We might have done what we can do, and we're going to move on here. And then he paused for a second. He said, but I know you're never going to do that. And I said, there is no chance. Like, if we at the outset said we're doing 8, and that's what gets me to the best possible chance of this never coming back, then, dude, we're doing it. I don't care if I have to buy chemo on the street. We're doing this thing.
Yeah.
And it was like mile 20 of a marathon. So mile 20 of a marathon, there's a thing called the wall. And it happens.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of that.
It happens literally to everybody. There's really no way around it. And it's kind of like your body catching up with you and saying, well, this is dumb, right? Stop.
Yeah.
And, your fueling is off. Your liquid intake is probably off. If it's warm out, you're sweating. So you're behind the 8 ball and in a lot of ways not thinking clearly. But if you can make it through from just like 18 to mile 22, you're good, because by the time you get to 22, you're like, this is like a 5K and change to finish. Like, I'm done in like 40 minutes. And so I just need to keep on. And before you know it, you're counting down your miles. You're like, I'm in the 4s, I'm in the 3s, I'm in the 2s, I'm in the last mile, and you're done. But that 18 to 22 range, you're beat up and you're not close enough to say I'm almost done. You still got to wait to go. And so it was the same way with chemo. And so I took a lot of that thinking and I tried to apply it to what I was going through, that grit and determination, that doing the hard stuff first really, really made a difference. And, I think about the lessons I learned from triathlon. I didn't grow up an athlete. It was like a midlife crisis for me. And
okay.
It was, I took this up in my mid 40s. I ran my first 5K at a professional conference after a few drinks. I didn't do especially well on that 5K. So I'm like, I went home and started registering for 5Ks to say, all right, I can do better at this. And then, 5K wasn't enough. I started doing 10Ks, then half marathons, then marathons. And, then it wasn't bad enough that I sucked at one sport. I should probably be mediocre at 3. And
There
so
you go. There you go. Yeah.
And running. And so, it scaled
That's
from
good.
there. As I'm doing it, I'm like, I don't really know why I've been drawn into the sport. I've never been particularly athletic, but I am drawn to it. And then you begin to think and say, right, so do all the pieces of this puzzle really fit together in a way that makes sense? And they did for me. Like, would I have survived cancer without triathlon? Yeah, probably. But I wouldn't have had the same coping skills. I wouldn't have had the same attitude about, you just keep going. When I had nausea from the chemo, I'd wake up in the morning and have like morning sickness from the chemo. And honestly, I thought about it and I'm like, well, you throw up during a swim of a triathlon all the time. You throw up during marathons all the time. You don't stop and go to the medical tent. You wipe your face off and you keep going, right? It's not really a thing.
Pop a breath mint and keep going.
Right. That's all it is. And so, when I woke up not feeling well in the mornings, I'm like, yeah, I throw up during races all the time. I just keep going. So, I got up, I tucked my chemo pump into my suit jacket pocket. I came to work. I gave speeches. I did all the things that I generally do. And I felt better for it. I also exercised through chemo. And that was before. So in the past, like 2 or 3 months, some really great data has come out about people who have cancer, people who are on chemo and radiation, and the differences in the people who exercise during chemo and the people who don't. And 2 things they walked away with. One is that it's much easier to tolerate the side effects if you exercise.
I can see that.
The chemo seems to work better. Why does the chemo work better? Because you're pushing it through your body, right? You're moving around. You've got all your systems firing, at least for an hour a day. And so I exercised right through, not to the same extent that I did before and after, but I made sure I exercised every day. And look, it was hard. It was like, oh, this is the last thing I want to do. And geez, I got the perfect excuse. I have cancer, right? But I still did it. And I always felt better after I did it. There was never a time. There's never been any workout I've done, since I've been training where I'm like, wow, I really regret that. It's like the hardest thing is putting on your sneakers and starting. But once you start, it feels great.
Yeah, I've been there before with some exercise. I go, man, I don't go to push. I don't know if I'm in a wheelchair. Got my neck broke playing football, and so I'm in a wheelchair. And there's days I got to go out and push, and I'm going, I don't feel like doing this today. But once you finally get out there and do it, and especially when you're into it, you go, I'm glad I came out.
Yeah. Yeah. It always feels good. It always clears your mind. It always clears your head, and, speaking of clearing your head, in the book, I did several chapters about how cancer and its treatment actually change you. And they do. I think cancer changes you in many, many regards, because for me, as someone who is younger, it forces you to think about life a little bit differently.
Oh, yeah, I believe that. Yes.
I felt a pretty dramatic shift from, I always wondered, what will my legacy be and what do I want my legacy to be? And at some point it shifts almost like to past tense where, okay, if something happened today, what would my legacy look like? And so you almost shift from future tense to past tense in the midst of all of this. But you also think a lot about your life, your relationships. The single hardest chapter for me to write in the book, and some of them came very easy. Some of them took longer. The beginning and end actually came pretty easily to me. But there's a chapter in the book about how cancer changes you spiritually. And for me, that was by far the hardest chapter to write, because I feel like I had to work some things through in order to be able to write about it in a way that was authentic and genuine. I actually thought about, because it took me so long to write that chapter and I had so many things to wrestle with, that I actually thought about pulling the chapter out and just not doing it. And I'm like, no one's ever going to know there was supposed to be this chapter.
That's right.
And then, as I contemplated, I'm like, yeah, but that's like not running the mile 18 of the marathon. You can't say you did it if you left out the hardest part. And the fact that you're struggling on this kind of says that you probably have some things to work through. So I finished it. I wrote about it. It required me wrestling with the notion of a higher power and what lies beyond. In the book, I talk a little bit about how, I have lots of friends who are who are religious, and they would say to me, look, I'm praying for you every day. And there were times when I'm like, geez, I'm not even praying for myself consistently. Maybe I had to get on that because, I want to have a good outcome here. And so I had a lot of things to wrestle with. My relationship with other people changed a little bit. My relationship with my male friends changed a lot. They became a lot closer. I will say there's no one who, at least that I'm aware of, that said, oh, you have cancer, and kind of pulled back. If anything, my friendships grew a lot deeper. You come to understand who shows up and who doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
The book contains, some information about, what do you do if somebody you care about and somebody you love have cancer, and what are some things to say and what are some things never to say? What I always said to my friends is, any sentence that begins with "at least," right? Because people will say to you, at least it's not pancreatic cancer, or at least you still have your hair, or at least you have good access to care. None of that is a reassuring kind of thing when people say it. That, and like, everybody has a story about, a family member that took alternative treatments and did really well, or somebody that didn't do really well. And, my good friends would say to me, look, you're tough. You're going to be okay. And I would never do this, but I would often think when folks said, you're going to be fine, I would often think to myself, how do you know? Like, my oncologist doesn't even know that. He's counseled me about possibility of my own mortality. I understand that I might not survive this. What makes you so sure that I'm going to be okay? And, is that something you're saying to comfort yourself? And if it is, all good, but recognize that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So, I tried to put a little something in the book for everybody. This podcast excited me because, I think the reality is we at some point in our lives are all going to have to persevere through something, right? It's going to be, an illness. It's going to be a disability. It's going to be a setback in life, the loss of a job, the loss of a marriage, the death of a family member, the death of a pet. It's going to happen. And in all likelihood, if you're like everybody else in the world, it's going to happen a few times.
Yep.
Right.
And most of the time, you won't have any control over it.
You won't have any control, and you won't have any warning. And so
most of the time, yes.
I often say to people, I'm like, so look, my life changed with a text message. We always talk about, one phone call can drop you to your knees. Well, one text message can change your life forever. And, there are folks out there who talk about, cancer is a gift. And let me be straight up. I don't see it that way. Cancer is no gift.
Yeah, I can understand it's a gift if you win overall, I guess. Or if you die and you know where you're going afterwards, maybe, I guess. But no, I'm like you. I can't see any ailment as a gift. It may show you who your friends really are. It may show you what you're really made of when you come through it. But no, I wouldn't wish this gift of being paralyzed on anybody as a gift. I wouldn't do. So I'm like you. I just can't see that.
Yep. But I think, and you probably say this too, but you can find the beauty in things, and you can find ways to cope with it. And, some of my relationships are closer. My mindset has shifted a little bit. I mean, I've always been a pretty positive person, but my mind has shifted a little bit. What used to feel like big problems are now little problems in the context of cancer. And it's like, I looked cancer in the eye twice. And so, anything else that comes along, I'm like, I got this. Are you kidding me?
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And even thinking about a third return from cancer. I mean, my attitude is, you came at me once, you came at me twice, you'll come at me again. And you know what? I'll slap you right back down. Right.
That's right. That's right.
So it does change your mindset a little bit. It also, I don't know that I would. In fact, I do know the answer to this. If it weren't for cancer, I wouldn't have written a book. I always felt like I had a book inside me. I didn't know what it was going to be about. And so, I wouldn't have done that without cancer. And so I was able to do that. And, my hope in doing that is that for folks that are facing cancer, any other serious illness, or just challenges in life, there are ways of managing those things and persevering on. And sometimes it's just you're going to white knuckle it and get through it. And sometimes you're going to glide through it and kind of find the best strategy for making your way through. One of the things my coach said to me one time, we're running together, and she's a professional athlete, but we're running together, and she's like, "Oh my God, you sound like an elephant." And I'm like, "Yeah, I have a very heavy footstep." And she's like, "Well, every time your foot stomps on the ground, you're wasting energy, right? So you're taking all this energy and you're pounding it into the ground, which is not moving you forward, right?" And she said the same thing to me while I'm swimming. She's like, "All right, so you're swimming fast, but you're thrashing about, making a big ruckus in the pool. This is supposed to be gliding along, right? Not wrestling with the water, but kind of letting the water go over you, under you, and gliding through. The same thing with running, right?" And so one of the things I learned about triathlon training is that, simply like smashing your way through the miles is not the best strategy. You can get through it, but gliding and being more strategic about it is a much more efficient pathway. And quite frankly, in navigating cancer and things in life, sometimes we tend to like just kind of trample our way through life and over problems, when in fact there might be a different way that's a lot less, energy cost and a lot more productive and that kind of thing. And so, I try to draw some of those parallels and just give folks some tips for getting by.
All right, Dr. Jeff, you mentioned 4 times, now I didn't interrupt you. 4 times you mentioned perseverance. So hold on, let me get you a fist bump. Fist bump. Come on. Oh, don't go anywhere. I got to do it the old fashioned way. It's not working on the other. Hold on, Jeff. Let me go and move this. We can get that fist bump, buddy. All right. Here. And there it is.
Nice.
All right. Had to do it the old fashioned way and push another button. And also, and I'm like you, there's no way I consider any illness, getting paralyzed, anything as a gift. Okay. Now, what I do see is the gift of the end results. Okay.
Yeah.
You wouldn't wrote a book, you said, if it wasn't for this. Yeah. So, for that to come out, we definitely find out how strong of a person we are when we go through these trials that are suffering. And again, it may be that you don't live, you die at the end, but what you set for your family before you leave. And that's the gift. It's not what we go through, it's how we deal with it.
Yep. It's 100%. And look, and what you can pass on to others. So I've been in, the helping profession for, longer than I care to admit, more than 30 years. And, in doing this, I became the guy that needed the help, right? I was always the helper, the guy in control. I got it for you. You have a child with a drug and alcohol problem, I can help. You got somebody with a mental health problem, I can help. You need to get access to social service, I can do all that. And I did it for a lot of years. And suddenly I'm the guy showing up, at the medical center saying, look, I could use your help. I'm the guy Googling my test results in the middle of the night, and so, we have those role reversals and are forced to get comfortable being, interdependent on other folks. Right. So as long as you're the helper, that kind of gives you at least some little position of superiority. Right. You're in control and that kind of thing. And then suddenly, something's going to come along that's going to take that control away from you, which reinforces that at the end of the day, we're all really, really dependent on each other.
Yeah, exactly. And again, sometime during someone's life, they're going to fall in there, no matter what it may be. Car accident, right. Cancer, heart disease, whatever it could be, and they're going to have to fall back. And don't be like me. I had my sinful pride that I would struggle to get my shoes on, taking me 35 minutes. Then after I'm done, I'm ready to take a nap instead of asking for help and someone can get my shoes on in 2 minutes.
Yeah. So
it took me a while to swallow that sinful pride. But yeah, definitely anybody. It's to me, you're more powerful when you're able to recognize you need help and how to get it than
Yep.
to struggle. And like I said, needed a nap when I'm done putting my shoes on.
Yep.
That's like you're more, yeah, it takes more courage and power to ask for help than it is to withdraw and asking.
Well, and sometimes people need to help for them. I have a very close friend who said to me, look, if you ever want me to go sit with you during chemo, because the infusions are like a full day kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I'm happy to take you and sit with you. He's like, but I know you'll probably never take me up on it. And I didn't. And I knew he was right. And I said, yeah, no, I'm good. I got this. And, in retrospect, I thought about it and realized he needed to help me as much as I needed to help. Like
And see, this is his way of helping.
It was about creating that intimacy and creating that connection for him. It wasn't about me needing help. I don't need someone to come and sit with me and hold my hand.
Yeah.
But it's about allowing that interdependence and allowing that connection to happen.
He didn't know of any other way. He couldn't give you the chemo. He couldn't,
Right.
But I could be there with you and we can talk and pass the time with you.
Right.
So yeah, I got a friend that's going through pancreatic cancer now. He's been taking treatments for a year now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like you. He would never ask me to go sit up there with him. So I just show up every now and again.
Yep.
And just to be there and to see his eyes. He's 81 years old, 82. He was my baseball coach when I was 15 years old, and we just stayed friends. But yeah, he would never ask me, but I was surprised. I surprised him a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes a difference, when, and one of the pieces of advice I give in a book is, if you know someone that's struggling with any health condition, don't say, if I could do anything, let me know, because there's zero chance we're going to let you know anything.
Exactly.
If you want to do something, you just go do it, right? You just go show up. You just go buy groceries. You send the card, like whatever you want to do. Don't talk about it. Just do it, because we're never going to say yes. We're never going to tell you what we need.
That's 1,000% correct. Because we've been in control of our lives all this time, and we don't want to seem dependent again. Right. And so if you're going to do anything, do it on your own, and we'll say thank you. But I'm like you. Yeah, we're not going to ask for it.
Right.
So, all right, Dr. Jeffrey, your book is called, we mentioned it several times, but the name of it is Every Mile Matters, again, from a triathlon. And he says, turning triathlon training into cancer triumph. So this is going to be a book for your athletes and non-athletes alike. So, and then the main thing, again, taken out is the mental aspect on how to prepare for this stuff. So.
Yep. And look, it's about the journey. I know at the end, we try to wrap this up with some advice for folks. And so, it's the journey. When I finished Ironman Florida, as I was getting ready for the race the day before, one of the things my coach said to me was, make sure you enjoy the finish line, right? Because in races, even if you were slow as a snail in the race, the finish line is all lights and music and people. And so all of a sudden you got a new burst of energy and you're running across the finish line as fast as you can. And then it's over. And so one of the things she said to me is, make sure that you savor that you enjoy it. You worked a long time to get there. And in dealing with cancer, I realized, and, hence the name of the book, every mile matters. The easy ones, the hard ones, the early ones, the late ones, and the piece of advice I would leave for your audience probably is, some of those miles are going to be really tough. Just keep going, right? Just keep going. It gets better over time. If you're going through some rougher miles right now, just know that the miles will get easier over time. And at the same time, you're going to get stronger. And that's maybe what makes them a little bit easier.
There you go. Good advice there. Yeah, that's it. Who was it? Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going.
That's it. Keep going.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, Jeff, thank you for coming in. And boy, I've been thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm, again, once an athlete, and I definitely believe if you're athletic, you'll be able to deal with more of this stuff a little bit easier than ones that didn't.
Yep.
participate. I mean, maybe not a huge, but a little bit, I would think,
Yep.
from that, because a lot of stuff you can learn in the sports arena. So
100%.
again, your teammates, which you become a cancer person, then your teammates is all your doctors and nurses and
Yep.
therapists and everybody else, and your wife and kids and other family. You got a big old team, so there's a lot of things to learn in sports.
Yep.
So
100%.
all right, Pay, appreciate you being here. Go ahead and give your social media for people if somebody wants to get a hold and talk with you.
Sure. Most of my social media handles are at Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, even TikTok, believe it or not. So easy enough to find. Website for the book is called everymilematters.com. Everymilematters.com. Book is available on Amazon and all the major booksellers.
There we go. Good. And I'll put all that stuff in the show notes, make it easier for people to hunt you down. So
Awesome.
definitely get the book. I'm going to order me a copy, being an athlete. Give me some more ideas what I can do to help me. So, all right, Dr. Jeff, we know that people are hurting and struggling. And if you can leave us with a positive message, that'd be a blessing.
Yeah, look, keep going. You got this. One of the things you see along the marathon route is folks that say, you look great and you got this. And to the folks out there, regardless of what place you're in right now, you survived 100% of your bad days. You got this.
That's right. You got it. Hang in there, like they say in the South there, Jeff. Hang in there like a hair in a biscuit.
There you go.
So, all right, everybody, thank you for showing up, and share us with someone that can use some ideas, on persevering through Jeff's adversity. And again, throw in there a little bit to remember, it doesn't have to be a spinal cord injury or cancer. It could be whatever you're going through and just substitute it in for the story. It's the message is the main thing. Okay. All right, everybody else, thank you for coming in. Dr. Jeffrey, thank you for coming in. I'm Dr. James Perdue, the professor of perseverance. Do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.